Some people leave social situations feeling strangely exhausted. Not physically exhausted, emotionally exhausted. Even after a normal conversation. Even after spending time with people they care about. And sometimes, the strange part isn't the interaction itself. It's what happens afterward. The silence feels relieving. Being alone feels like recovery. Their mind finally slows down. Their body feels lighter again. And if you've experienced this often, there's a good chance it's not because you hate people. It's because your nervous system was never fully relaxed around them to begin with. A lot of emotionally sensitive people spend social interactions doing something invisible, monitoring, reading reactions, adjusting themselves constantly, paying attention to tone changes, facial expressions, pauses, shifts in energy, subtle emotional tension. And while other people are simply talking, their brain is analyzing the emotional atmosphere in real time. That kind of awareness is exhausting, especially when it becomes automatic, because eventually you stop entering rooms as yourself. You enter rooms prepared to read people, prepared to manage energy, prepared to avoid discomfort, prepared to protect yourself emotionally before anything even happens. And most people don't realize they're doing this. They just know social interaction drains them more than it seems to drain everyone else. You can usually see it in small behaviors. They rehearse what they're going to say before speaking. They become quieter around dominant personalities. They laugh softly even when something isn't funny just to keep the atmosphere smooth. They notice when someone's energy changes instantly. They think about whether they sounded normal enough afterward. And sometimes they leave a conversation feeling tense without fully understanding why. Because emotionally aware people often absorb environments before they process themselves. For many people, this pattern begins early, especially in environments where emotions felt unpredictable. Maybe someone in the household had sudden mood changes. Maybe conflict happened without warning. Maybe they had to learn how to read emotional tension quickly to avoid problems. So their nervous system adapted. It became alert, observant, careful. And children who grow up emotionally scanning their environment often become adults who can never fully stop scanning, even in safe situations. That's why some people feel tired after simply being around others, because their brain wasn't resting during the interaction. It was working, constantly reading, constantly adjusting, constantly trying to maintain emotional safety. And here's where it gets deeper. A lot of people think social exhaustion comes from introversion, but sometimes it comes from self-monitoring. There's a difference. Introversion is needing solitude to recharge, but emotional self-monitoring is something else entirely. It's when your brain becomes so focused on managing how you're perceived that social interaction stops feeling natural. You begin filtering yourself automatically. You think about your tone while speaking. You wonder if you're talking too much or not enough. You become aware of your face, your reactions, your body language. And eventually, conversation stops feeling spontaneous. It starts feeling performative, not fake, just managed. And the exhausting part is that many people do this without realizing it consciously. Their nervous system learned long ago that being emotionally accepted mattered, that staying likable mattered, that avoiding conflict mattered, that reading people correctly mattered. So now, even normal interactions can feel psychologically demanding. And here's something most people never notice. Emotionally sensitive people are often carrying multiple conversations internally at the same time. The actual conversation happening, and the emotional interpretation happening underneath it. What did they mean by that? Did their energy change? Do they seem distant? Am I being annoying? Should I say less? Was that response too cold? That internal processing never fully stops, and over time, it creates mental fatigue, not because they're weak, because their attention is split constantly between expression and observation. That's why some people appear calm socially, but feel completely depleted afterward. Their mind never got a chance to fully relax. And here's where it gets interesting. Many people who feel emotionally drained around others are actually highly empathetic, but empathy without boundaries often turns into absorption. They don't just notice emotions, they internalize them. Someone else's stress changes their body. Someone else's tension affects their mood. Someone else's emotional distance lingers in their head for hours. And because they're so emotionally aware, they begin adapting themselves unconsciously to keep interactions stable. They soften their opinions, hide irritation, mirror personalities, reduce their emotional presence. Not because they're fake, because adaptation became survival, especially for people who learned early that harmony was safer than honesty. And eventually, something subtle starts happening to their identity. They become easier to be around for everyone else, while becoming harder to fully feel themselves. Because constantly adjusting your energy disconnects you from your natural state. You become skilled at emotional accommodation, but exhausted by prolonged exposure to people. And the strange part is, many emotionally drained people actually love deep connection. They love meaningful conversations, emotional depth, psychological honesty, calm environments, safe people. What drains them is usually not connection itself. It's emotional unpredictability, performative interaction, social pressure, feeling observed while also observing everyone else. That tension slowly overloads the nervous system, and after enough time, solitude stops feeling lonely. It starts feeling regulating. Because when they're finally alone, they no longer have to calculate, no longer have to read the room, no longer have to monitor reactions. Their body finally exits emotional surveillance mode, and for the first time all day, their nervous system breathes. That's why many emotionally aware people disappear socially sometimes. Not because they don't care about people, because they need recovery from constant emotional processing. And unfortunately, many people misunderstand this pattern completely. They assume distance means coldness. They assume withdrawal means disinterest. But often, emotionally exhausted people are simply overloaded. Too much noise, too much energy, too much internal monitoring, too much emotional data being processed at once. And after years of experiencing this, many people start building identities around being low energy, reserved, or antisocial, when in reality, they were never disconnected from people. They were overly connected to everyone around them, to every shift, every tension, every emotional atmosphere. And carrying that level of awareness for too long becomes heavy, especially when nobody sees it happening. Because emotional exhaustion is often invisible. The quiet person sitting calmly in the room might internally be managing 100 emotional signals at once, trying to stay grounded, trying not to absorb too much, trying to remain emotionally balanced while unconsciously adapting to everyone around them. And eventually, they begin craving environments where nothing needs to be managed. No performance, no monitoring, no emotional calculation, just stillness. And once you understand this pattern, a lot starts making sense. Why certain people drain you instantly, why crowds feel overwhelming, why being alone feels peaceful instead of lonely, why some conversations leave you mentally exhausted for hours. It was never random. Your nervous system learned to stay alert around people long before you realized it consciously. And when awareness becomes survival, even connection can start feeling tiring. But once you see the pattern, you begin understanding yourself differently. Not as someone too sensitive, not as someone bad socially, but as someone whose mind became deeply trained to protect itself emotionally. And that awareness changes everything. Because the moment you understand the pattern, you stop confusing exhaustion with weakness. If this explains something you felt quietly for a long time, there's more to uncover. Understanding yourself is the beginning of everything.